How's it going, guys? This is Thomas from Alotech, and today I want to walk you through an overview of how I post-process my photos in Lightroom. Now, this video tutorial is not going to cover Photoshop. It's only going to cover Lightroom CC. There will be a follow-on video really digging in to the functionality of Photoshop. Overall today, I just want to go over the fundamentals of Lightroom and show you the tricks I use when I post-process my photos. As a reminder, this video goes along with my free Lightroom and Photoshop guide for wildlife photographers, and you get your copy for free at alotechgear.com. Just wait after roughly 5 seconds and a pop-up will appear. Then just quickly fill in your info and my guide will be sent directly to you. This guide is not going to go into much detail as my written one. This has been one of my most requested topics, so I'm going to show you how I'm going to post-process this mountain goat photo I just discovered on my hard drive. Before we jump in, I'm sorry if you can hear a buzzing sound from my external hard drive. As a disclaimer, the colors you see on your screen might be different than mine. My computer is color calibrated for my printer, but we should still roughly see the same colors and have roughly the same brightness. Now let's jump in. Starting off with the first setting we're going to change today, and that's the white balance. Now I almost always edit my white balance in Photoshop, but we can also set it in Lightroom. You have two ways to set your white balance. The first one is to slide the temperature and the tint slider back and forth until your photo just looks and feels right. The second way is to use this little eyedropper and select an area closest to gray in your image. The second way is what I prefer because it's faster, it's accurate, and it's just convenient. Now you can also combine the two ways by using the eyedropper to quickly set your white balance and refining that setting with the sliders to achieve the look you're going after. All I'm going to do is click on the eyedropper and select a gray area in the image, which is these rocks right here. Now that looks pretty good. Let's see what happens if I don't click on a gray area in the image. So that's definitely not the look I'm going after. So let's undo this by clicking Command and Z. Now that our white balance is set, let's move on to exposure. In the upper right hand corner of your screen, you'll see these two little boxes, and you want to check them. What they show you is areas that are pure black and pure white. Now going back to exposure, I did photograph this image just a tad too bright. So I'm going to slide my exposure slider to roughly where it looks good, and that lands around -0.1. So that looks good to me, so let's move on to contrast. Keep in mind that this is my style, and I love adding contrast. And most of the time, really 99% of the time, I'm adding contrast to my photos. I'm just going to slide the slider to the right until it roughly looks good. So we're going to land somewhere around +25. So moving on to the highlight slider. This is where things get really interesting. My goal is that I want bright whites, however I want detail in those whites. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to decrease my highlight slider and hold the Option or the Alt key. So around -45 is where I'm going to land up. And I know it doesn't look that good. To make this image look better, I'm going to increase now my white slider. I'm going to hold the Option or the Alt key and drag my white slider to the right. So plus 25 looks about right. Now we have bright whites, but we have bright whites with some detail. I'm going to do the same thing with the shadows and the black slider. I'm going to increase my shadow slider to roughly plus 12. Now let's decrease our black slider, and let's hold the Option or the Alt key. So negative 14 looks about right to me. So that takes care of the tone section. So I don't sharpen my images in this section much because it's a global adjustment, meaning it affects the whole image. I really don't want to sharpen the background because it's the sky. And it's just going to add some artifacts. So I'm just going to set this to plus 5. To sharpen everything including the rocks. The vibrancy slider is also something I always use, but it's just my personal taste. For this photo, I'm going to slide it to roughly, let's see, plus 10, and that looks about right. However, I'm still not happy with my photo. The mountain goats appear to have too much yellow and too much orange. What I'm going to do is use the color section right here, and first decrease my orange, the saturation. And negative 14 looks just about right. So let's do the same thing for the yellows. I'm going to decrease my saturation to roughly minus 12. Let's move on to something everyone enjoys, and that's sharpening. The details panel is where you can really fine-tune your sharpening in Lightroom. So I'm going to start by clicking on the icon in the left-hand corner right here. And then I'm going to click on an area I want to focus on. So I'm going to click on the eyes of animals. So these mountain goats right here. I want to be able to see some background, but also some eyes. So let's sharpen until we see some artifacts appear in the eyes, in the heads, in the background of these animals. So plus 50 looks about right to me. Now the masking section is really where the magic happens. So what you want to do is hold down the Option or the Alt key and drag the masking slider to the right until you see areas you don't want to sharpen be pure black. So 77 looks about right to me. What we did is we sharpened the goats in the rocks without sharpening the background. Now let's move on to noise. Since this image was taken at 640 ISO, it doesn't really have any issues. So I'm just going to set it to my standard plus 2. There's no math behind that. It's just something I always do. So this image looks good to me. Now let's finish off and crop this photo. So just click on this icon right here. We're going to drag these corners in. So we're going to try and follow the rule of thirds. Click enter. So to straighten this image, there's some things you can do that help you. You can use the straighten tool right here and drag a line. You can click Command Z. Or you can do it manually by sliding this angle slider right here. So we can always do the slider and draw a straight line on the image. But that doesn't look good. So I'm going to do for this image, because there's not really that many straight lines, I'm going to use the angle slider. For me, around so I'm going to cut that roughly in half. So that looks good to me. Just hit enter once you're done. That wraps up this video covering Lightroom at a high level for wildlife photography. I just wanted to remind you that you can get my free copy of Lightroom and Photoshop by clicking on the pop-up on my website. I just wanted to thank everyone that is part of my design board. All of your input, your feedback, and your insight helped me so much. I was able to narrow down the features that we all care about the most, and I sent the specs off to the factory to get some prototypes. This is not only going to be the most comfortable bag ever created for wildlife photographers. There's so much more innovation inside and outside the bag, and I can't wait to show you. Now we're moving on to something that's really fun, and that's the colors. I need your help deciding the color schemes the bags should be. So what colors do you want? Just head over to alotechgear.com and click on the Design Board tab. I just wanted to thank you so much for your insight. That wraps up today's video. And remember to check your email next week. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next week.